Hello, folks. Happy Thursday, rainy Thursday, but a Thursday nonetheless. We are nearing the end. Today, we're going to be looking at the executive branch, and then next week will be the judicial branch, and then that is it. So, this is the second to last lesson of civics for you. So, uh, bear with me, stay with me. Don't give up when you're so close to the finish line. Okay. So there's three parts to this. Part one is where a journal prompt. You're gonna tell me, what do you think the coolest part about being the president is? You can do a little bit of research on that if you'd like. Simple YouTube uh, search would, that says what are the coolest things about being the president. I'm sure there's a bunch of videos about that. You can go online and research that way as well. You don't have to research. You can just listen to this video, and I can tell you some of the cool things, in my opinion, of being president. One, you have your own personal jet, Air Force One, and you know what? I'm gonna link. I'll link that to. I'll link a cool video uh, to this assignment about when ABC got to go on the Air Force One with when Barack Obama was president. It's pretty interesting and pretty cool to see all the cool stuff in that jet. So anyway, but I digress. Does having your own personal jet sound like the coolest thing about being the president? How about living in the White House? Did you know that there's a bowling alley in the White House? Maybe you think that's the coolest thing. Also, a basketball court as well. Obama, you may or may not know this, is a huge basketball fan, and he used to play basketball on his own personal indoor basketball court all the time. Other cool things about being the president: you travel the world. Sometimes not necessarily for good things, right? You're going to war-torn areas, maybe, but you get to see the entire world. You're the leader of you're basically, not only are you the leader of the United States, you're the leader of the world. A lot of people look up to you, not just in America, but in the world in general. So maybe you think that's cool. So you would type your response here. I'm not going to do it because that's up to you to decide. And then from there, the second half of this introduction is, so yeah, there's a lot of cool things about being president, but here are some of the more difficult things. So what I want you to do is I want you to read each statement, and I want you to rank each task that, the president is required to do. One being the hardest thing, seven being the easiest. There's no right or wrong answer. This is just your opinion. So I'll read each one. It says lead weekly meetings where I ask the leaders of the executive branch departments for advice on how to handle the country's most difficult problems. Is that the hardest thing about being president, or the easiest thing, or somewhere in the middle? Go to Congress and give my yearly State of the Union speech on what's happening in the U.S., which is broadcast live on television. Decide whether to approve or reject a bill. Congress has sent me that would cut research funding for a serious disease that many people have. So, that's another part of being president, is sometimes you have to make tough decisions like that. Maybe that, in your opinion, is the hardest part of the job. Maybe it's not. Maybe you're good at making decisions, and that's number 7 to you, and that's the easiest. Answer difficult questions from reporters at a press conference where I'm asking Congress to spend a lot of money on space exploration. Follow the Constitution and the law, even if I disagree with it. And I'm happy to tell you that, in my opinion, our current president is having a lot of trouble with following the Constitution and the law. Decide whether to send more troops into war, knowing that some will die, but it will keep the country safe. Again, part of being the president is you have to make really tough decisions, and that's another tough decision. You want to keep the people here at home safe, right? But by doing so, you're going to risk other American lives. And, presidents make those decisions unfortunately, have to make those decisions. And then finally, make sure the Department of Homeland Security carries out new safety laws at airports, even though I know many travelers will be angry. Okay, so rank those from 1 to 7. Each one should have a different number. I'm not asking you to on a scale of 1 to 7, how difficult do you think this is? You would have only one of these being 1, meaning you would think this is the most difficult, and you would have only one of these being 7, meaning you think this is the easiest, and then whatever's in between. 6 obviously is not going to be the easiest, but it's pretty easy. 2 is not the toughest, but it's pretty tough, etc., etc. I think you get the idea. All right, from there, you are going to read about the executive branch, which I will read to you now. And then after that, the third and final part is you're going to answer some questions, and we'll do that together as well. So this says, for the president, all in a day's work. And then you have a picture of Donald J. Trump. He is our current president, and he was elected in November of 2016. It says the president's rule book. So the president of the United States is the leader of our nation and the leader of the executive branch of government. The Constitution of the United States gives all the rules for being president. It tells who can become president, what powers the president has, and some of the roles and duties the president takes on. So we've looked at the Constitution already, right? There's several different articles. Each article tells the people, hey, this is how the government should run. It's a guideline for the government. And Article 2 is all about how the executive branch should run. And I'm going to read those sections now. So Section 1 from Article 2 of the Constitution says, the executive power shall be vested in the President of the United States before he enter on the execution of his office. He shall take the oath, the following oath or affirmation. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will do to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Every president has to say this. There's, an inauguration that happens, a big ceremony where people come, they cheer, people make speeches, but the president or the incoming president has to take this oath in order to be sworn in as president. So that's according to Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution. Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution says the president shall be commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called into the actual service of the United States. He may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer of the executive departments upon any subject relating to the duties of their respective offices, and he shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. He shall have power by and with the advice of the consent of the Senate to make treaties, provided 2/3 of the senators present concur, and he shall nominate and by and with the advice of the consent of the Senate shall appoint ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, judges of the Supreme Court, and all other officers of the United States. So Section 2 talks about some of the powers the president has. Some of the powers, big one, he's the commander-in-chief of the Army and the Navy. So technically, he is number one in charge of them, even though you have generals and all that stuff. He is this is another one here that some people forget. Usually presidents don't use this power until the very end of their presidency, but they are able to pardon anybody who is in prison. So if it's somebody who he thinks it was wrongfully accused, somebody who has served their time, whatever it is, the president has the power to pardon them and, release them from prison. He also has the power to make treaties. And finally, another big one, he has the power to appoint judges for the Supreme Court. And again, we're going to be looking at the Supreme Court and the judicial branch next week. Okay, Section 3, Article 2, Section 3. He shall, from time to time, give to the Congress information of the State of the Union and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. He shall receive ambassadors and other public ministers. He shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed, and shall commission all the officers of the United States. So these are some of his responsibilities. He has to make a speech once a year called the State of the Union, where he basically tells Congress, this is how our country's doing. This is what I recommend our country do moving forward, whether recommending a focus on laws he thinks should be passed, that kind of thing. He also will meet with ambassadors from other countries. Okay. And then finally, from Article 1, Section 7, which technically is, about the legislative branch, but still important. It says, every bill which shall have passed the House of Representatives and the Senate shall before it become a law, he presented to the United States, or be presented to the United States. If he approve, he shall sign it, but if not, he shall return it. So even though this is Article 1, which is all about the legislative branch, remember, because of checks and balances and the way the three branches work, the president has the ability, once Congress passes a law, to sign it and make it an official law, or to veto it and send it back and say, nope, this is not going to be made into a law. All right. So a little bit more background information now. So lawmaking in the Pres. One of the president's most important functions is not in Article 2, it's in Article 1, we just read it, which talks about Congress. The Constitution can be sneaky that way. Congress is the lawmaking branch of government, but the Constitution requires the president's approval before a bill can actually become a law. The president either signs the bill to approve it or rejects the bill with a veto and sends it back to Congress. Second in command. So we're going to talk about the vice president now. Maybe. There we go. The Constitution of the United States gives the president a helper, the vice president. However, the Constitution doesn't say much about what the vice president does, except that the VP is also the president of the Senate, one of the two lawmaking chambers in Congress. But the VP also presides over the Senate to cast a tie-breaking vote, or when there is a ceremony. The rest of the time, the vice president advises the president, travels the world negotiating with other countries, helps carry out laws here at home, and is important in many functions in the executive branch of the government. So, and this is our current vice president. His name is Mike Pence. You've probably seen him on the news if you've been watching with coronavirus. He was put in charge of the coronavirus task force by President Trump. So, he's been in charge. Whether you think he's done a good job or not, I guess remains to be seen. But he's been in charge of making sure that the country is prepared for the coronavirus, is, making sure people get tests, that kind of thing. He is also, another big responsibility is he's the president of the Senate. And usually that doesn't mean much, except the Senate has 100 people. So there's a possibility that there is a tie, right? 50 people vote yes for something, 50 people vote no for something. And he would act as the tiebreaker, the person who would make the final vote. But only when that is needed. Political party leaders. Here's another important function of the executive branch. The president and vice president act as the leaders of their political party. The role is not part of the Constitution, but has evolved over time as part of the political process. A political party is an organized group of people who share similar views and work to influence the government in support of those views. As party leaders, the president and vice president work to accomplish the party's goals for how the government should address the issues facing our nation. And the Republican and Democratic parties are the two major political parties in the U.S. So, in November, we are going to elect a president, whether it be Trump again, or it's looking like Joe Biden is going to be the Democratic nominee. And those two are the political leaders of these parties. There are plenty of people who are Republican that may not necessarily like Trump, but because Trump is the president, they probably support him more than they would because they want to support the party, the political party. All right, becoming president. In the United States, presidential elections happen every 4 years. There's going to be one coming up this year. I hope you are registered to vote. We want to make sure we have our voices heard. A president cannot serve more than 2 4-year terms, a total of 8 years. The rule is found in the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution, which was added in 1951. The president has only served one. If a president has only served one term and wants to be reelected, that president ends up spending a lot of time campaigning during the last year of the term. If the president has already served a second term, often the vice president will decide to become a presidential candidate. Many presidents started out as the vice president. All right, so what about if the president dies? What happens then? Well, there have been several times in the history of the United States where a president has died. When that happens, the Constitution provides that the vice president becomes president. It also gives Congress the power to make a law saying who becomes president if something happened to both the president and the vice president. And Congress did this in the Presidential Succession Act, which puts the Speaker of the House, the leader of the House of Representatives, next in line after the vice president, and lists everyone who is in line after that. So it actually goes down 27 different succession lines. You can find that on your own. You don't have to know who comes after the Speaker of the House. But if Vice President Pence and President Trump were both to die, who are Republicans, Nancy Pelosi, who is the Speaker of the House and a Democrat, would actually become the president of the United States. Kind of crazy. All right, so last part is let's answer some questions. So you have here statements, and you want to match them up with the powers and duties listed in the Constitution for the president. There are 10 questions that have to do with the president and 4 questions that have to do with the vice president. So let's do them together now. It says lead weekly meetings where I ask the leaders of the executive branch departments for advice on how to handle the country's most difficult problems. So what would that match up with? I would say, looking through it, E would probably be the best thing. May ask advisors, lead parts of the government for their opinion on different issues. So what I would do is I would type in E here. There we go. Go to Congress and give my yearly State of the Union speech on what's happening in America. What would that match up with? Well, update Congress on how things are going in the U.S., right? And that would match up with letter I. So I put an I in here. Number 3, decide whether to approve or reject a bill that Congress has sent me. And let's see. Okay, F, can sign or veto a law, would match up with number trace. Follow the Constitution and the new law even if I disagree with it. So must protect and defend the Constitution. And again, some people would say that Trump isn't necessarily following that, but I guess it depends on who you are. Decide whether to send more troops into war, knowing that some will die, but it will keep the country safe. And that would match up with Commander-in-Chief of the military, right? Make sure the Department of Homeland Security properly carries out new airport safety laws that will anger some travelers. And that would be the power to carry out. Okay. And that's really the big thing, right? The executive branch, the legislative branch makes the laws. Well, if they put in a law, different laws require different resources in order for the law to actually happen, right? So if there is a new law that's out that says, I don't know, let's use drones. Drones seem to be pretty popular. That says there's now a speed limit on how fast drones can fly. Well, how are they going to figure that out? President Trump, the legislative branch makes that law. President Trump has to put things in place to make sure that that's enforced, right? So maybe he has a new police force that monitors the speed of drones and gives out tickets as needed. Okay, hold a press conference where I ask Congress to spend more money on space exploration. And so that would be probably D, make a recommendation to Congress about which laws are needed, right? Okay, and again, remember, this is a big part of being president towards the end, right? You decide whether or to let someone out of prison based on the prisoner's good conduct in particular circumstances. And that would match up with G, pardon someone from a crime, canceling their punishment. Let's look at 9, negotiate an agreement with another country that would lower taxes. Each one adds to the sale of items from the other country. And that would be H, making treaties with other countries. And then finally, choose a new Supreme Court justice to replace the one who's retiring. That would be G, choose new Supreme Court justices. Of course, the Senate has to approve it. So, I don't know if you remember this, but a couple of years ago, there was a Supreme Court justice that was nominated by President Trump. It didn't mean that he automatically became a Supreme Court justice. He had to then be interviewed. It's like the toughest job interview ever, because basically the entire Senate is going to ask you all sorts of questions. And then they will vote on whether or not that guy or girl would become the next Supreme Court justice, one of the next Supreme Court justices. Okay, so take over. And so this is about the vice president, the next 4 statements. Take over as president if I'm needed. What would that match up with? L, take office as president if current president dies or is impeached. Act as leader of the Senate. And then M is the president of the Senate, would match up there nicely. Cast a tie-breaking vote in the Senate would match up with N, can vote in the Senate if Senate is equally divided on a vote. And that just leaves K, which is elected with the president to hold office in the executive branch, work with the president to run the executive branch. So 14 is K. Okay, you're not quite done. And I put this little reminder in here so you scroll down to the next page. Last thing you're going to do, and then you are good to go, is the executive branch has lots of different departments that are in charge of different aspects of life in America, right? So, like, for example, the Department of Education, their function is to, make sure that there are, things in place to ensure that every American is educated fairly and equally, for example. So what I want you to do here is I want you to match up the function with the department. You can do this in one of 2 ways. You can drag and drop if you want. Let's try that again. Okay, so there you go. You could drag and drop like I just did. Or you can just write in the word too, if that's a little easier for you. So let's do it together. It says works to protect the country against terrorism and make sure the borders are safe. And of course, that would be Homeland Security, right? Keeping our borders safe. You might have thought it was defense, but that's more number 3, which is keeping the United States safe using the Army and Navy. Okay. Make coins and paper money, tries to help the economy and collect taxes. That would be the Treasury. And if you look at the icons too, they should really help you out as well. Enforces federal laws, prevents crime, and punishes those convicted of federal crimes. What would that go in? Well, probably Department of Justice, because we're talking about crime. Okay. Moving right along. How about this one? Supports farmers, makes sure our food is safe, gives recommendations about food nutrition. Probably would go with agriculture. Probably it would. And works to protect the health of all Americans and offers medical and other basic services to people in need. That would be Health and Human Services. So the Department of Health and Human Services, I'll just kind of give you an idea of how it works. Those people would be the group in the executive branch that makes sure that people who maybe can't afford healthcare are getting the proper healthcare they need. And making sure that children are being cared for health wise. Okay, next one. 7, builds and maintains federal highways and railroads, makes rules for air travel, and promotes transportation safety. So, transportation. And that would match up with, as you can see, that little bus icon, transportation. And then finally, provides funding to public schools and helps students pay for college. That would be Department of Education, right? We're talking about college, public schools. And, with what's going on right now with the coronavirus, they would definitely be involved in helping the states make decisions on, what are we going to do next year if this coronavirus thing keeps going? Are we going to keep distance learning going? Are we going to do, an altered school year where the school year goes into, the middle of July? They've been talking about that. Lucky you guys are graduating before any of that stuff happens. So the executive branch is not just the president. There's a lot of other groups of people involved. And you just saw some of them there. There's other ones as well, but these are the major ones. Okay, once you're finished with that, please make sure you mark this as done and you turn it into me. This is, as I said, your second to last lesson of your civics senior career. So I hope you are watching these videos and you find them helpful. Next week is going to be our last lesson. It's going to be about the judicial branch. Make sure you log in.